Hello, Assalamu alaikum. How everyone? So, in today's discussion, we'll discuss about the activities of the indigenous people and the rights enshrined by the ethnic minority people in Bangladesh. So, Bangladesh is literally a very big country, not a big country. Bangladesh has a small uh, property, but within this property, we have to also nurture the community and the people of indigenous community. So there is a very big vacuum of our legal perspective of the indigenous people and the ethnic minority, focusing on the fundamental rights and the fundamental principles throughout the activities of the Bangladesh. So in that perspective, we can say that. Bangladesh has failed to take the initiative on developing the principles of indigenous group of people in Bangladesh and the indigenous core mentality. So the question may arise how we can give actual rights to those indigenous people and the ethnic minority people. So at least it's actually not possible for the government to overlap the whole procedure in that mechanism. So it's actually create a huge vacuum of law and legal practice of the indigenous mentality in Bangladesh. But before that, the Bangladeshi government they have failed to provide these types of rights to those indigenous people, because the indigenous people and the ethnic minority people they are not covered the definition procedure of local custom and local practice of the indigenous nature. So, indigenous people's community is actually a very big, but the problem is that in the Bangladeshi practice and the Bangladeshi resolutions, the people of the indigenous community or the individual they are getting a short amount of rights and short amount of activities from the government. First of all, we have to initiative to make a plan who are the indigenous people. So as far as it possible, I have known 48 groups of Bangladesh. They are the ethnic minority and the indigenous people. So first of all, we have to mention that who are the indigenous people. Indigenous people are those persons who are living in a specific area, a specific land for more than uncertain period of time, and people has a strong affiliation with this culture, with this mother tongue, even with the philosophy of the indigenous people. But according to Article 23A of Bangladesh Constitution, it is especially mentioned that all peoples will be included of the indigenous people who are living in a specific community in Bangladesh, basically in the Bangladeshi part, Rangamati, Khagrasori and Bandurban for more than thousands of years, and Bangladeshi government will take the rational factor for developing the core concept of the individual people for more than thousands of time. But I think that in that criteria, Bangladeshi government they have failed actually to make to introduce the new dimension and core concept of the individual law. So in that perspective, we have to make crystal and clear law for the indigenous people's right. For example, in the year 2010, the former Awami League they has taken some initiative to make books on the basis of their mother tongue of the indigenous peoples, focusing more particularly on Chakma, Marma, Garo, Khashia, Mro people of Bangladesh. So I think that it's actually a very good strategy for developing their philosophy, core identity, and the philosophical aspect of the indigenous people in Bangladesh. But my question is that what are the sayings of the international convention? So different kinds of international convention like UN Charter and ICCPR. In according to the UN Charter, the indigenous people's personal life, liberty and dignity, right to life, right to movement, even the freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, it must have to ensured by the domestic country. So I think that it is the duty of the Bangladeshi government to reshape and to utilize, to evaluate the rights, dignity, the fundamental procedure of the international mechanism for more than thousands time. But I think that in that perspective, Bangladeshi government they have take the strategies so colorfully and effective. So this is the common concept of indigenous people's rights regarding the Bangladeshi concept and criteria. But according to Article 27 of ICCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Right. So, in that codification, the ICCPR declared that we have to respond the rights, regulations, activities, insanity, even the philosophy of the indigenous people. That means we have to mention, we have to preserve the rights of the indigenous people for the ends of justice. Otherwise, no development will never be arise whenever the development of the indigenous people will never be occurred. So, from this perspective, Article 23 of Bangladesh Constitution, it directly indicates the rights of the indigenous people in Bangladesh. For example, with the Bengali speaking people, we have no problem in speaking Bengali in our common perspective, in our educational life, in our social life, even in our political life. And it is also mentioned that mentioned clearly and profoundly that we have some problems in speaking English, but we are most probably we are with the faculties and the teachers. We are the bilingual. Bilingual means we can easily cope up with another language by Bengali and English. But the basic problem is that Chakma, Marma, Garo, or the indigenous community in Bangladesh, they totally unable to speak in English or Bengali because they have the mother tongue, they have their own language and philosophy. So for protecting the rights of the individual people in the indigenous people, we have to mention these types of rights. We have to provide books, regulations, documents, even they can utilize their speaking of their mother tongue, because according to article on of even charter, every people has every people has right to life and dignity. So mother tongue is one kind of part of the dignity. Whenever you are not able to speak in your mother tongue, that means that you are not able to superflow, you not express your dignity. So dignity is a big factor in interpreting the mother tongue. So as a government of Bangladesh, as a government philosophy of Bangladesh, we have to protect the activities, the mother tongue of the indigenous community. But the biggest question is that who is the ethnic minority in Bangladesh? Ethnic minority means a small group of people who has individual identity, individual nature, individual religious perspective. These types of people will be called as the ethnic minority in Bangladesh. So ethnic minority rights and the individual people's right is actually different. So there are some of the basic fundamental rights we have to mention for the indigenous people and ethnic minority gradually. First of all, the first question is that the government will take the proactive initiative for the development of the indigenous people for making their lifestyle so first. For example, in Chakma, the practice of Chakma, Marmagaro, they are obsessed in the Jum cultivation. But Jum cultivation, it is not the practice of the common people in Bangladesh. So, for these reasons, we have to provide the scientific elements, scientific functional activities to the farmers related to the Jum cultivation, Jum culture. So, this is on kind of cultural right of the indigenous people in Bangladesh. So, another perspective, they have the political rights, because in the year 1997, Bangladesh government has been planned the CHT, Chittagong Hill Tracks Peace Accord by Abul Hassanat Abdullah, and we have to make a very good relationship with the indigenous people. But we all are the equal before law. But whenever there are equality before law, there are reasonable classification that I have mentioned in my previous lectures or previous discussion. So there are absolute difference of the rule of law, equality before law, and the indigenous people's reasonable classification. For example, according to Article 28.4 and 29.3, Bangladeshi government has installed the reasonable classification or the positive description for the young people, for the poor people of the ethnic minority, indigenous people, and who are the female figure in Bangladesh. So this is the another duty of the Bangladeshi government to initiate the fundamental rights and fundamental principles mentioned in Bangladesh Constitution and outside the Bangladesh Constitution. So 169 article of the ILO, International Labour Organization, so they has provided some of the authentic rights and duties of the indigenous people in Bangladesh. So we have to also mention these types of activities for the core development of the indigenous people in the long run. Otherwise, we will not achieve the fundamental strategy in developing the life schedule and the lifestyle of the indigenous people in the long run. So this is the common development of whole amount of people in Bangladesh, and in the future time the Bangladeshi government and the stakeholders, even the NGOs, they will take the authentic informative strategy for developing the life sense and the life sequence of the individual people and the individual community. So it is basic rights of the indigenous people to develop their political strategy, because they have the unique political strategy. They are not believe in the Bangladeshi political strategy. That doesn't mean they are not following our sovereignty. They are the sovereignty of they usually follow the sovereignty of Bangladesh, result it in they are the citizenship of Bangladesh, citizen of Bangladesh. So whenever they are following the citizenship and citizenship schedule of Bangladesh, that means they are the part of the Bangladeshi nature and culture. For these reasons, in the mid of 1980s, former President Shoaib President Ziaur Rahman initiated the mechanism and definition. They will be called as the Bangladeshi community, the Bangladeshi people, because they are not the Bengali. So during the time of 1971, we have been enlarged the slogan "Tumi ke ami ke Bangali Bangali Bir Bangali Ostro Dhoro Bangladesh Shadin Karo." But we have to remind that they are not the Bengali. They are the Bengalis, not the Bengali speaking people. They are the indigenous people. They have the same right as the right enjoyed by the Bengali Muslim community, Bengali Hindu community, and the Bengali another religious perspective in Bangladesh. So having lots of political dimension and the philosophical dimension, we have to utilize the life schedule. We have to utilize the common lifestyle of the indigenous people for the ends of justice. Otherwise, Article 27 of ICCPR, Article 169 of ILO Convention, or more even Article 23A of Bangladesh Constitution's philosophy will never be achieved in the future time in Bangladesh. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.